be fine.
Would you say that from woman to woman, like the same erogenous zones are, at least from the clitoris, stuff like that, like clitoris, however you want to pronounce it, sorry.
Yeah.
Like, is it very similar?
I like to say clitoris because I think clitoris sounds like a dinosaur, like a dinosaur. Clitorisaurus rex or something like I don't like that, so that's fine. But it's both ways is correct. Sorry. So you were asking about how
Is it? I mean, commonly like this is
right.
like all women feel this similar features from this.
Women vary drastically in just about everything. Like some women, their breasts, they can have orgasms from nipples. And some women, like they don't enjoy nipple stimulation at all. For some women, their clitoris, they want it touched directly when they're highly aroused. And some women never want it touched even remotely directly, like it's through stimulating through maybe even legs together and from the external over, from the outer lips or something, or is kind of rubbing on something from the external. Some women say like they don't really like clitoral stimulation that much. They like intercourse, and
we talked about deep spot,
right,
and G spot,
and so women vary a lot. I think that women can also learn new things if they're open and if they want to. But if they just kind of decide like this is all I want, then like our mind, I think limits us a lot. So yeah, so even though like we taught a lot last week, right? But every student is so different, and so you got to get her to learn her body, or you learn it, with her.
And things could change.
And things can change. Yeah, you have a baby, and all of a sudden, your body's completely different.
Or like you were talking about last week, things could awaken, change in that way. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. But you can also develop, like women can develop scars from childbirth. Menopause, bodies change again. Things become less or more sensitive. And so it varies drastically. Any other questions after last week? So yeah, I think you have to kind of treat it as this exploration, and I think that you should probably revisit other spots once in a while, and maybe just assure your wife, let me just try something different tonight. Let's see what we can discover. Trust me.
And be ready.
Just relax. I got this for a little while. Let's just try it for a while.
It may not work, and just be ready to laugh about it. Right? Just say, we tried it, it didn't work. That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you want to go into next?
I want you to talk about the playbook thing a little bit.
Okay. So,
because, this is a whole bunch of information. I think it can feel overwhelming, and you don't start by, like, you and your wife knowing all of this stuff.
So I told Ruth, I said, you need something to help these guys. They need, like, a playbook, something that they can start out simple. And I said, you need a football analogy. So I said, you need some simple plays, and then as you can get more complicated. And they need to have those plays available so they can think of them in advance, but they can think throughout the day about, like the first 7 plays are going to be this, right? So you can think about them during the day. So I said, what you need is you need an analogy like Tom Brady. These guys have to have like a little flip chart on their wrist. They can look at it and say, oh, okay, I'm going to play. So that they're real simple, right? But then I said the analogy goes on though. It's like when
so like what would be like basic plays?
Well, you'd look at like what am I going to do for foreplay,
right?
Or maybe back further than that, how do I initiate sex, right? How am I going to start to make it known? How am I going to initiate sex, or how do I react if my wife initiates sex? What would I do if she does? So I'm prepared for that. So that's one, is how do you react to or how do you initiate sex? And then 2, what does foreplay look like? What is she like? What does she want to do? How does she react? How do I initiate this? How do I make sure I'm reading her reaction to foreplay, right? So foreplay, anything you want. Make sure you ask your wife what order she likes foreplay. For about 25 years, I was surprised by the answer.
And that can change.
That can change.
It's not like the baseball bases. Like, it's not always first base, second base, third base, fourth base. Like, yeah.
I just remember there was an episode of Friends where Rachel and Monica are talking about the erogenous zones, and they're going and they come up with the orders, and 1, 2. 1,
You guys
3.
know that video, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's a pretty good analogy. As long as what Monica said, don't camp out on 7 or something like that. But what was it? Make sure you ask your wife what order, because maybe she needs to get aroused before she enjoys a certain erogenous zone. Does that make sense?
Or just pay attention to her signals. I mean, if she's batting you away, like, don't argue with, if she's batting your hand away from a certain area, that doesn't mean she doesn't want you in that area later on. That means she doesn't want you in that area right then.
Right now. So that kind of goes to that first question. Like, things change as you go along. Does that make sense? Okay. What was I going? So the basic plays.
Mhm.
So initiation, foreplay, and then core play is Ian Kerner. Who's Dan? Did you talk about Ian Kerner?
Mhm.
He talks about core play. I said, I don't know. But core play, have some basic plays, what you want to do, whether it's vaginal sex or oral sex or manual sex, something like that. And then there's,
Well, and I think even those, like the core play, like what position you're in feels completely different, right? You can have manual stimulation where you're holding her and cuddling, or you can have manual stimulation where you're watching her body, or you can have manual stimulation where, like, there's all different. And so probably one of the easiest way to expand your repertoire is how you hold her during that time, right? If you're holding her loose and playful, it feels different than, like, if you're holding her with strength and really like you can hold her different ways. And so the positions and how you hold her make a big difference, even in just the basic, whether it's oral or manual or whatever.
but I would even say, if you're going to introduce a new thing and you're getting ready, it's like, this may not work, we may laugh about it. It's like you start simple and then you get more complicated as you go. Does that make sense? You're trying a new thing, start simple. So, of course, old guys, we've tried a lot of different things. So we've got some big basic plays, but you guys, younger guys, lucky you get to start simple and just expand on those and get more complicated, right? But then, the analogy goes further, the Tom Brady analogy. You got these basic plays, and maybe you got complications on there. But then you have to read your wife, and you come up and you say, oh, no way was that going to work. I have to call an audible. So then you have to look at it and say, I got to do something completely different. Just be ready for that and play off that. And I say, like, who's the split end that Brady has that broke his arm this year? His name? Edelman. It's like they could look at each other and they could, like, just look at each other's eyes and they knew what they were going to do. So you know your wife well enough, you can just look at her and say, I know what we're going to do now. Does that make sense? So you say, know your player, know your wife, so you know what to do next. So that's the audible. So you have a basic playbook, but you also can do an audible, and you can kind of come up and say, well, this isn't going to work. That makes sense? So that's my thing right now.
Okay. Any thoughts on that? Questions?
Is that helpful?
You guys get it?
It's all kind of leaning into that direction of like trying to design the rule book for. But it was just, we've been actually talking about my wife and I, like, what foreplay do you like? What does this and that? We actually learned in the past couple of weeks. Even after we actually wrote some stuff down, it matters based on her hormones. And certain weeks this will work, and then certain weeks it absolutely doesn't. And there's no rhyme or reason other than she's like, I don't know, a certain time of my cycle.
Right. But here's the thing, right? Football players learn first by learning basic plays, and then they learn to call audibles. They learn how to read their players, and hopefully by the end, like they play so, like, they know their players so well. it's not like they're outside of that place. They're not limited to, oh, well, I had to do this, right? My analogy I always use with the women is dancing. Like you learn how to learn the foxtrot, and you're thinking about steps 1, 2, 3, right? And then you're learning variations off of that. And hopefully somewhere way out here, you get to this place where the two of you can go dancing. You don't think about steps at all. You just move together. And depending on the music and the mood, you just move together, and you don't have to think about steps at all. And so this is where we want to get out here, where we're not thinking about steps or we're not thinking about plays, right? We just know each other that well. But you can't start over here. You have to start over here. Okay. Does that make sense?
But old age and skill will overcome youth and talent every time.
Okay, we're gonna talk about your guys' bodies just a little bit. I'm gonna just read a quick passage out of Song of Songs. This is chapter 5, verses 9 through 16, and this is gonna be her speaking. The friends say, "How is your beloved better than others, most beautiful of women? How is your beloved better than others, that you so charge us?" And she answers, "My beloved is radiant and ruddy, outstanding among 10,000. His head is purest gold, his hair is wavy and black as a raven. His eyes are like doves by the water streams, washed in milk, mounted like jewels. His cheeks are like beds of spice, yielding perfume. His lips are like lilies dripping with myrrh. His arms are rods of gold set with topaz. His body is like polished ivory decorated with lapis lazuli. His legs are pillars of marble set on bases of pure gold. His appearance is like Lebanon, choice as its cedar. His mouth is sweetness itself. He is altogether lovely. This is my beloved. This is my friend, daughters of Jerusalem." And so this is how she describes her lover. And it's not, he takes out the trash. He helps with the kids. Like, she enjoys his body. And it's important. It's important, I think, for your wife to get to this place where she enjoys your body and affirms you and your body just like you affirm hers. Okay? And it's a good thing for a wife to get to the place where she can daydream about her husband's body rather than thinking, I shouldn't think about him like that. So that's a little bit of Song of Songs, and we're just going to dive into, we have just a handful of topics we're going to talk about in terms of your body.
Right.
Okay.
So we talked earlier about Kegels. I don't know if you guys have been doing your Kegel muscles. One of the things what Ruth and I said, we talked to her Dr. Julie Slattery. Well, she did a podcast with a doctor, and he's probably like 65 years old, and I was shocked to find out he's having erectile dysfunction. I was like, this guy should know about Kegel muscles. I don't know if he's been doing that. So some doctors know about it and really encourage it. But I encourage you guys to do Kegels for a lot of reasons. One is stronger orgasms, but also for stronger erections, longer, stronger erections, and better control of ejaculation. Just knowing that feeling better. If you know how to control that Kegel muscle, you'll know how to control the ejaculation better. And then for us older guys, it really helps urination and just getting an erection and holding an erection. Just having those muscles clean, and my clean is that they've been exercised, right? So it's good to exercise that muscle.
So one of the most common questions that guys ask is, how do I last longer? And part of that is this lie that maybe men have believed, well, if I just last long enough, she'll have an orgasm during intercourse. That's not always true. Like, it might be you could last for 2 hours and it wouldn't make a bit of difference, okay? And so I think it's important to not put that much pressure on yourself or on your penis. But if you want to last longer, I want to give you a couple of things to think about. One is that anxiety or worry is the enemy of sex. And that is the same for women. If they start worrying about having an orgasm, they're going to have a hard time having an orgasm. But it's the same for men. If men start worrying about whether they're going to last long enough, they're going to have a hard time lasting long enough. Same thing is true as if men start worrying about am I going to get an erection or am I going to maintain my erection? They're going to have a hard time. When we start worrying, things start not functioning like they naturally do. Okay, so you've got to get out of your head and get out of worrying. You've got to take the pressure off yourself. There are other ways to enjoy things and take the pressure off of your penis. The other thing is that when men want to last longer, I think they tend to avoid any kind of foreplay or any other touching because they think, well, if I'm not touched now, then I'll last longer during the main event. But last week, I think we talked about the fact that our bodies are trainable, so they learn things, okay? So what happens if all of a sudden your body is touched less and less? Like it can handle less and less stimulation before things go, okay? And you want to think in terms of the opposite. How do you train your body to handle more and more stimulation? How do you train your body to handle more and more connection? And so together with your wife, you could go through a process of using manual or oral stimulation where she does stuff with you and she's more in tune with your body and she sees, you know what, can I get you to last 5 minutes? Can I get you to last 10 minutes? Can I get you to last 15 minutes? Can I get you to last 20 minutes? Now, if you can last that long during manual or oral stimulation, you should last that long during intercourse because intercourse is physically much less stimulating than manual or oral stimulation, okay? But if you can't do that during intercourse, most likely it's because anxiety is coming into play. All of a sudden you're worried, okay, this is the main event. I gotta last, right? So you need to take that pressure off and the worry because that's going to act as a trigger.
And you also talked about last week about just maybe sliding in during vaginal sex and just staying still, just getting used to that feeling.
Right, and so a lot of times the movement that feels good to you is not going to be movement that's necessarily very stimulating for you.
For your wife.
I mean, for your wife, right? And so instead of in and out thrusting, do some other things that are not as stimulating, where you just sit still and feel her, let her move like it feels good. I was going to say something else on that. The other thing about that is that if your pelvic muscles are tight, if those Kegel muscles are tight, you're basically like you're wound tight as a drum. And it's much harder to be able to just relax and enjoy stimulation. And it's gonna be harder to control things. Okay, and so you need to learn how to control those muscles. And you might need to even get your wife involved as far as just kind of to giving you a pelvic massage or giving you a back rub or full body sensuous massage to just kind of relax things.
And get used to just being touched.
Right.
Because a lot of guys, we don't touch anybody through the day.
Right. So that's kind of some of my ideas on lasting longer. Anybody have any questions on any of that? Some guys have a hard time maybe with erections or maybe ejaculating during intercourse because maybe if they've viewed a lot of pornography and they've masturbated a lot, a hand is much stronger than intercourse, right? And so you can get used to this stronger physical stimulation and it can take a while for your body to adapt. I'm going to tell you the same thing, like your body can learn new things, but it takes time and you have to leave those old things behind, okay? And so if you're frustrated because you always have to pull out and finish with your hand, then you may get to this place where you just have to say, you know what, like I'm not going to do it. I'm going to be okay, even if I don't finish. And I'm going to let my body readjust and eventually it'll just happen, okay? Can I talk about this one?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not going to jump in.
Okay. So a little known fact is that men can actually have multiple orgasms. It is a little different than women. The way that men have multiple orgasms is that they'll actually have an orgasm without ejaculating, And since they haven't ejaculated, they will maintain their erection and then they can have another orgasm with ejaculation. Okay. And so part of the process of that is men learning how to relax their body, because if you're driving to the finish line, that's not going to happen. Like, you need to be able to relax. And so usually when that happens, it's a matter of a man staying very relaxed and stimulation ramping up and ramping up and ramping up, and a wife being so in tune to her husband that kind of the last second she can kind of just put on the brakes a little bit, and his body will roll over and those muscles will contract just like an orgasm. It is an orgasm.
Those Kegel muscles.
Right. He'll experience pleasure. It'll feel a little different because he doesn't ejaculate. But he can have an orgasm and then he'll maintain his erection and he can keep going. Right. So
That makes sense.
okay. Another really interesting thing that I've just discovered in the last year, which I think is fascinating, just gonna say. I've been talking to the women about this one. It's called a frenulum orgasm. Anybody ever heard of a frenulum orgasm? Okay. So the frenulum is right where the head of the penis meets the shaft of the penis. There's like a little kind of lip attachment with it, which is super sensitive, that area. And a man can actually have a frenulum orgasm from his wife stimulating just that area of the penis. So there's no encompassing, there's no holding the shaft, there's no thrusting. It's basically just a massage of this area using lubrication. It might be done with the mouth, it might be done with fingers.
What's interesting.
This is the interesting part.
What's interesting is.
I think it helps a husband understand what it's like for a wife to have a clitoral orgasm. Because if nothing's encompassing a penis, you can't take things into your own hands as far as start thrusting in order to kind of drive to the finish line. And it takes patience, and it might take 15, 20, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. You might not even finish the first time. And you might halfway through be thinking, I don't know if I can do this. You might be thinking, you will have a lot of the same feeling that a wife has sometimes when she's trying to have a clitoral orgasm. Okay, like, I'm supposed to just lay here and relax. How do I do this?
Well, like,
Okay.
this doesn't feel like anything.
Like, is this really going to work? Am I really going to get there? Okay.
This is taking too long.
Yeah. And so I think it's a great way for a husband to kind of understand what a wife goes through sometimes. And vice versa, I think it's a great way for a wife to understand what a husband goes through sometimes. Of, okay, like, she's got to be sure of herself. She's got to reassure him, and you know what, just relax. I got this. We got all the time in the world. She's got to, all of a sudden she's got only this little tiny territory that she's trying to read and trying to make feel good rather than this easy route to get you to finish. And so I think it's a great way for a wife to understand, for both of you to understand each other. That makes sense?
But you have to exercise the Winston Churchill principle.
Which is?
Never give up. Never give up on your spouse. Never give up.
So, any questions about that one? Okay, I'm going to talk about prostate massage, and this is something that we talk about in the women's class, and it's probably, I think it's probably the edgiest thing that we talk about. And I would and just a little bit, okay? So the perineum is the area between the testicles and the anus. And this area is actually filled with nerves and filled with blood vessels. And massaging this area is actually really good for your body. And a lot of times during sex can feel good. But when you're really, really highly aroused, almost ready to ejaculate, your testicles pull up towards your body, a firm pat of a finger pressed into this area and massaging this area can totally change the dimension of an orgasm. And the reason is that you're actually massaging the prostate from the exterior, okay? So, years ago, before they had antibiotics to treat inflamed prostate, a man would go to the doctor because his prostate was inflamed, and it's this gland, right? That
And the inflamed prostate cause trouble urinating and
right,
all kinds of things.
because the urethra goes through that, and as this gland starts getting kind of clogged up or not functioning well, the circulation's not good. It impacts urination. It can be painful. So before antibiotics, guys, we go to the doctor. The doctor used a lubricated finger, insert it into the anus, and using the pad of his finger, he would pull the pad of his finger to massage the prostate to increase circulation until the man ejaculated, and kind of through that process, it would clean out that prostate. Okay. Now here's where it gets real interesting. The reason that doctors didn't just have the guy masturbate is that an orgasm from prostate massage is much gentler than a regular orgasm. And so an orgasm from prostate massage wouldn't irritate the prostate. It would clean it out without irritating it, okay? Orgasms from prostate massage are very similar to orgasms from G-spot massage. They are what guys would say is a full body experience. I don't know exactly where it's coming from. It feels good, but it's this different feeling orgasm, okay? Turns out it's a different nerve system, just like the G-spot is a different nerve system from the clitoris, okay? So for couples that are open to a new experience, and obviously this is a very vulnerable experience, this can be part of the marriage bed where if a man is very relaxed, they have good communication, he trusts her, and then this could be part of their marriage bed where during extended arousal, the wife would insert a finger into the rectum, massage the prostate, and maybe additional stimulation of the penis or not, and you would have orgasms that way.
I can talk about animals.
Obviously, yeah, I should mention Anaros. Thank you. Obviously, whatever goes in that area goes nowhere else. Okay? There's bacteria in that area, and that can't be spread anywhere else. There's no lubrication in that area, so you have to make sure you use lots of lubrication. That tissue is much thinner than the regular, and so you have to be really careful about any sharp nails or hangnails or anything like that. The other thing is that when you have an orgasm, all those muscles contract, including the sphincter around your anus. And so whatever goes in that area has to have a stop so it doesn't get sucked in during orgasm. Guys end up in the ER all the time getting things fished out of the rectum because they were using something to stimulate themselves and it got sucked in. Okay, so if anything else is used in the area, it has to have a stop on it. So Jim mentioned Anaros. So this, I talked about how doctors were massaging patients' prostates to help them get better. And what happened was a medical device company called Anaros developed a tool to help men do this at home so they didn't have to go to the doctor. And basically, it was a plastic-shaped T. And you would insert that, and through contracting the Kegel muscles, it would do the same thing that a doctor did at the clinic and cause a man to have a prostate orgasm and clean out that prostate to make it feel better. And as men were doing this at home and not nervous and tense because they were at the doctor with somebody sticking their finger up there, all of a sudden they started realizing that this was actually very enjoyable. And so now these same devices that this medical device company developed are sold at all kinds of sex toy companies. Okay.
As one more thing I'd say, just as you said, as they were not nervous, I say that's another analogy to the frenulum orgasm in that the frenulum orgasm is like maybe like what your wife experiences with a clitoral orgasm. Prostate massage through the anus is something like your wife experiences when you put your penis inside her vagina. She is a very vulnerable position. Mm-hmm. You get a kind of a sense for how vulnerable she is in that. Does that make sense? Okay.
So you mentioned when you first started, you said there the area between anus and the scrotum can also
Yeah.
access that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you can't achieve that you can't achieve orgasm without.
You can, actually, I've read of men that can have an orgasm once they're aroused, that simply through massaging this area, they can actually have orgasms. Yes. And a lot of times men will be in tune to the fact that firm massage of this area during orgasm can feel really good. And I think it's probably a little bit of a blended orgasm, just like a blended G-spot clitoral orgasm, where it kind of changes the dimension of the orgasm and it feels different, and you're not exactly sure why, because it's kind of both at the same time a little bit. But yeah, you can definitely tap into the area from the external too. I mean, it might be a little more like it's not quite as direct, so it might take a little more to get in tune to that. I guess is my guess. That's my guess. That's my guess. Any questions about those?
Okay. And the next subject.
I'm gonna just say one more, just real quick. Eventually you guys will age, and whether you realize it or not, erections may become not automatic, and you may need foreplay to get an erection. I think it's a good thing. Like all of a sudden you get to enjoy foreplay too, and so I think it's just important to not be freaked out by that and think, oh my gosh, this is the end. Okay, I mean, you can adapt, you can learn new things, and actually, men, like an orgasm is not the same as ejaculation, and so men can have orgasms without ejaculation. Sometimes that's because of prostate surgery. Men can have orgasms without erections. Sometimes that's because of prostate surgery or because of other reasons. If you are willing to adapt what sex looks like, I think that you can enjoy intimacy with your wife for the rest of your life. Okay, but if you think that it always has to look the same way, then that there will be some drastic change. I mean, there'll be an awakening at some point of what happened. Okay.
But just like your wife needs arousal to get ready, at some point, guys, it might be you need arousal to be ready.
Right.
And you have to be open to that. And just communication.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Any questions about men's bodies at all? Are we really talking about this? Okay.
All right.
I'm gonna do this one too. Is that okay?
Well, I can start with this.
Okay.
I'll let you finish.
Okay.
So anal sex, the Bible does not specifically address it. It talks about sodomy, that's men raping other men. And so before you want to have anal sex with your wife, you have to make sure that's something you both want to do. You pray over it, and yeah, you both want to do, and it's not, no one's coerced into doing it. And you do it carefully so nobody gets injured, no bacteria floats around.
Yeah, and I'm gonna take this an even step further, and I'm gonna say that I don't think the couple should have anal sex unless the wife brings it up and the wife wants to have it. This is not an area that a wife stretches to meet her husband's desires, and this is the reason why. In order for a wife to not get hurt, in order for it to be mutually enjoyable, she has to be absolutely relaxed. Not relaxed like, well, I'll do this for you. Like absolutely relax and want to do this, okay? And so this is not an area where a wife stretches to meet her husband's need. It just is not. There are a lot of women doing this that are kind of reluctant and that feel pressured, and you can imagine they hate it because it hurts, okay? So unless a wife is fully relaxed, you shouldn't do this.
You know, beware of your motivation for anal sex. You don't want to be, oh, I've seen this in pornography or something like that. That's not the right thing.
Right, and the other thing is the anal sex that is portrayed in pornography would never ever feel enjoyable to a wife. It wouldn't. That's not how it works, okay? The anal sex that some couples enjoy in marriage that's mutually enjoyable looks completely different than the anal sex that is portrayed in pornography, okay? There are a lot of cautions, and it's important that we're educated about this, because kids are having anal sex. Middle school, high school, college kids are having it. And someday you may need to talk to your kids. There was an article in Teen Vogue magazine on how to have anal sex. Okay, it's a Teen Vogue magazine that young girls read. And it's easy to feel aghast, like, oh my gosh, why are they talking about this? Well, they're teenagers having anal sex in ways that are harmful and hurtful all the time. And so we need to understand the cautions so that we can educate our kids about the major cautions in this area. Okay, maybe that sounds crazy, but I don't know. Not talking about it isn't helping. Okay, so the cautions, obviously, motivation. Nobody should ever be coerced. A girl should not be guilted into this. She should not stretch to meet her husband's need. It should not happen because you've seen it in pornography. The area is filled with bacteria. Whatever goes in that area goes nowhere else. Whatever goes in that area has to have a stop. The tissue in the area is super thin, super sensitive, and actually transmits STDs much easier than through the vaginal walls. And so kids need to understand. They think STDs can't be transmitted this way. They can. They're actually transmitted easier this way. One of the number one reasons that young women are going to the health clinic in college is because they have fissures, anal fissures, from having anal sex. And you can get cracks in that area that are really hard to heal, okay? There's no lubrication in that area, and so there has to be tons and tons of lubrication because there's absolutely no natural lubrication. And you need to have good communication. Like, there's got to be a lot of trust between partners, husband and wife, in this. And so I think it's obvious to us that no teenagers should be doing this, much less having sex, right? But they are, so I think it's important to be able to talk about it and be educated. That's why I cover it. Okay. Any questions about that one?
I have a question.
Do I have a question? Let's talk about mismatched drives a little bit.
How about this one?
Okay. Want to do mixer question?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been 45 minutes.
Okay. So the mixer question is, we've talked a lot in class about the importance of intimately connecting during sex. So the mixer question is, how do you know if your wife is actually present during sex? And how do you reconnect with her if she's not there? Does that make sense to you, the question? Do you understand the question?
Should we just have them turn?
Can you just like talk through kind of like ideas, like how do you know if your wife is present during sex, and how do you try to, or how do you know if you're present during sex, and what are ways that you try to be more present during sex?
Want to have them turn to their neighbor and talk for a second? And we'll
Is
get
that
back together?
okay? Okay. Yeah.
All right, so just turn to your neighbor or
All right.
three. However you want to, 2 or 3 or 4. whatever.
Well, I just asked her, and it's like, I think that's like, hey, how does that feel, you know? Catered to like how she feels. Yeah, right, right. It's like lying there. I don't think there's a lot of like mental connection. And so I find myself like just having to stop for a second. Because if you just keep doing the same thing, you're kind of getting that physical feedback. Yeah. Yeah, my wife, I can tell she's a talker, just in general, so yeah, she's always talking. That's just boring. Talks too much.
It's a very
Yeah. So I don't physically read her body.
Sometimes it's trying to pull that out.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like this is giving me a good excuse to have like conversations I really want to have all the time. Yeah, so actually, I got a question. I think they're coming down to do a class for a group of women. How's that? Yeah, that'll be good.
Sometimes it's
Because that gives you share.
It's kind of hard to start this conversation without
You know what I mean?
I agree.
You didn't like homework. No, I've had to like legitimately pull this book out and be like, look at this. Yeah, to prove like. So it'll be, yeah, I think it'll be only better when she goes through it. Right. Is it just like a 6-week deal? Is it longer for the women? Is it longer for the women or is it just 6 weeks?
It's 6 weeks.
But it's
It used to be shorter for the men. The men used to be four weeks.
Okay.
Well, originally it was 2 weeks. Now it's 4 weeks. But it was like we do 2 hours with women. 2 hours doesn't work.
Yeah.
Jim's
But
like,
attention span.
Jim's like, you can't do 2 hours.
Even an hour and a half is pushing it some days.
I didn't think I'd be able to get guys to come for 6 weeks.
And you guys have to do it.
Well, I think the class has gotten better too. Like last week was killer good. Like I even ordered that book on Amazon right as I was watching it.
Which one?
She Comes First. Yeah.
Did you get it?
Yeah. I got it. Started reading it. It's amazing.
I'm pretty,
Yeah.
pretty accurate on the description. Totally
Yeah.
secular, but he loves being married.
Yeah. No, it's gonna help us on a lot of things. I can't wait for her to go through that too. Like that's the disadvantage I've had.
Yeah.
But yeah, you need to tell us how that goes.
It's been good. Like, I mean, honestly, what I was telling these guys is I like literally open the book and I say, this is what we learned about, you know, so she like knows I'm just not making crap up. You know?
Okay.
Okay, we'll pull it back in.
Okay. So what are some clues that your wife is not there during sex? Is that too personal? Let's just generalize it. What are some clues that women, like this might be something your neighbor said, that women are not there during sex?
Like your neighbors.
Awkward movements.
Of course, lack of
Feeling kind of,
Lack of movement.
Yeah. My wife
yeah.
is a talker, unfortunately. So when she like stops talking, then I know that like there's something wrong.
She's working on that list.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So I always say, honey, do your list before we start this. So just be done and it's on the list, you know where it is.
My wife is the opposite. We will be talking about household business for the first part, and when that stops, then it's okay to move forward.
That's good.
Along that line, my wife is like a joker. She likes joking. So, and I'm like super serious. Like I get like a mood. Like I'm all like suave, and she makes some stupid fart joke.
Yeah.
But as soon as that stops, then we can start.
Any other ideas on like how do you know if your wife's not there? Does she ever just like not stop? Does she ever just stop kissing you back? Maybe. So if she's not there, how do you pull her back? How do you get her back up?
Sometimes it's a fart joke.
Probably not. We can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results. Definition of
Yeah.
unsaid, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what you're doing isn't working. Gotta do something else.
Try something new.
Right.
Yeah.
I've experienced, you just have to like draw it back a little bit, so bring back the focus, the intensity. Sometimes it'll just be giving my wife a back rub instead. And do that as long as she needs, and that'll kind of help relax her too, and maybe bring the moment.
Anybody ever had sex with their eyes open? Some people, I've read that like for some people, they can't enjoy sex or have an orgasm without having their eyes open. Some people can't imagine having an orgasm with their eyes open. So you're thinking. So it might be a different way to connect during sex. Definitely like words, right? I mean, if you're talking to each other during sex about what's going on, you know that you're both there. I think even smiles can communicate that you're both there versus somebody's just off somewhere on fantasy island. Not very tangible stuff. It's not very easy to put into words. But I think there's like a real importance to it of not just going through the motions.
And also, if you notice that your wife is not there, it's like, how about if she notices you're not there? Like, how do you draw yourself back into it and say, man, forgive me, I was gone for a second there. I'm back. How do you tell her that? It's like, you look right at her and say, I'm back. Okay,
Okay. Hold that back in now.
well, it's okay.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about drives to help you understand drives just a little bit. Okay. There's almost always a lower drive and a higher drive spouse because that's just kind of how it works.
And we're both engineers, and we understand that this can't be the same. There's
So-
gotta be a difference.
And at least 20% of marriages, and probably closer to 25 to 30% of marriages, the higher drive is actually the wife and not the husband. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're all individuals, and so are our so there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. There's something, you're gonna miss out on a huge component of marriage and intimacy if you aren't having sex at all. And so there's an issue there that needs to be addressed, certainly.
But if your wife does have a higher drive, don't make her feel like there's something wrong with her because she has a higher drive. You have to assure her, say, no, this is normal. This happens, and we just need to work together. Does that make sense?
Encourage it.
So just to help you understand a little bit about the typical women's drive. The typical women's drive, most women don't want to have sex until they're in the midst of arousal. Like we don't have this drive that is screaming, have sex, have sex, have sex, except maybe like 2 days out of the month, okay? But for most of us, it's once we're in foreplay or core play that we want sex. And so I just think it's important that we understand that, because a lot of women maybe think, well, I don't need sex because my body's not screaming for it. That's not true. We need sex. Our body doesn't scream for it until we're having sex. Okay. The other thing that is real typical with women is the longer they go without sex, the less they care about it and the harder it is to respond. The harder it is to get warmed up. Like they get to this point where, they've gone a week without sex and they could care less. And they think, I don't need it anymore. And it gets really hard to respond and probably really hard for you to get her warmed up. You gotta be just patient with her to get her back on board a lot of times, okay? The opposite is also true for women typically, and that the more often she has sex, the more she wants it, and actually the easier it is for her body to respond, okay? And so there is some point where the snowball starts rolling, the good way, and there's a point where the snowball starts rolling
Depending on your point of view.
a negative way. Yeah, depending on your point of view. And so, like, I don't know what to do with that, except like women need to be aware of that. I think you guys need to be aware of it too. And I think that sometimes having a plan can be helpful. And for some, I think it's initiation is as important as how often you have sex. Like feeling wanted and desired can be as important as having sex often, right? And so for some couples, they'll have kind of an initiation schedule, right? Where the guy is Monday through Thursday and the wife is Friday through Sunday. You can have it more than that, but it's kind of this agreement of during this period of time, I'm going to initiate. And then during the other person's time, I'm going to initiate. And I'm going to make some plans in advance. I'm going to plan something. I'm going to have something in mind, and we're going to have fun. Instead of, I think it can be discouraging for women when a husband just shows up and kind of nudges you. Like they kind of, that's kind of the romance thing. Like we want you to actually think about it in advance because
So if you did.
you've
you
been
did-
thinking about this and how
You
can
did
I
have a
make this
play.
fun for my
You
wife?
thought about it.
You know, and that might be as simple as lighting a couple of candles. Don't make it that complicated.
Battery
It's
candles.
Simple as sitting here to take a bath. Okay.
Okay, but I say that we're talking about 3 things tonight that can be potentially dangerous. Anal sex, prostate massage, all those you do on your own and you make sure you research it. And then the third thing is,
Candles.
no. Your wife may say no, but
But
she doesn't mean no to you.
oh, I just wrote an article on this. Did anybody read my blog?
I read it.
Yeah.
It's super tricky.
I had a woman say in class not too long ago, you know what, sometimes when I say no, I don't really mean no.
That's super tricky.
And actually I really related to her. Because sometimes when we say no, we actually want to have sex, but we're not ready.
So if you talk about it as a couple, maybe you come up with words like, I'm not ready right now, but let's keep working at it and I think I can get there. Don't give up on me. Just let's keep going and see if we can get there. Does that make sense? So try not to, if you talk about it as a couple, then let's just take no, not tonight. Let's take that off the table and say, change that to, I'm not ready, but I might be able to. Does that make sense?
Well, and the thing is that her no usually means something. Like she's trying to tell you something. You may not know what it is, but she's trying to tell you something when she says no. She might be saying, I'm dead tired, but she also might be saying, like, I feel so insecure about my body. I don't want you to see me tonight. That might be what her no is about. Her no might be kind of testing whether she can trust you. Like maybe she's thinking like you just want sex again. And if she says no and you're out of there, either rolling over and grumpy or just pouting or whatever that looks like, then you just confirmed that you weren't really interested in connecting with her. You're not really interested in her. You just want sex. Versus if she says no and you say, what's going on? You know, and if you can just like get her to open up about what really is going on, then you just confirm that sex is not the most important thing in the world. She is.
And
I want to know what's going on with you. I want to understand.
And maybe you can be some practical stuff like, how about, if she says no, you say, okay, how about, I don't know what that means, but how about I give you a back rub and let's just see how you feel after that. It doesn't mean we're gonna have sex, it just means
I just want to help you relax.
I wanna touch you for a while so I can get connected to you. Let's see where that goes.
To your point too, I think one of the strategies that I've learned is you almost don't even have to sometimes have the conversation like, hey, are we gonna have sex tonight? You know, like just start with the massage and it just kind of leads to where it needs to lead.
But
You
she's
know?
gotta trust you, like if it doesn't lead where you gotta lead,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, I
Sound
love
good?
you, I'm gonna sleep great tonight, I'm gonna be right here with you.
Yeah. Yeah, so it doesn't always have to be with words.
Okay, so that one, remember, that's another really dangerous thing you gotta, if she says no,
It is
you gotta
dangerous.
stop.
Like you gotta respect her no. I'm not saying you don't respect her no and that you pressure her. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is if she says no and you back away, then you just confirm that the only thing you were interested in was sex. If she says no and you continue to pursue her and want to know her or help her relax or just connect with her in a different way, is there another way that we can connect? Then you just confirmed, I just want to connect with you versus I want to have sex, okay? Does that make sense? Right, so your reaction to her no has a huge impact. And it's building trust when you continue to pursue her versus just, well, I'm out of here, okay? And that I'm out of there can be very subtle, like you guys can do it very, very subtle, like we'll pick up on it, okay? Okay.
23 minutes.
23 minutes, that's what I have left? Okay. One of the things that I really thought about, a lot of people will ask the question, well, how often should we have sex? And it's probably the higher drive trying to get a number that they can manipulate their spouse with. Well, we need to have it at least this often, and it's probably the lower drive trying to manipulate the higher drive of, like we've had it enough this week. And really, I kind of like to just take that off the table. I think a lot of people would like to just compromise. Well, if you're 7 and you're 1, well, aim for 3. And I would rather just look at why did God design sex?
Battery's running low.
Oh, am I not plugged in?
Oh, the battery's down there on the ground. Can you get that mic?
Oh, that cord just needs to be plugged in.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.